Complaints. How's everybody doing? How we doing, Instagram? Welcome, hell to King Kiki. Great to have you here. And the Girl Gang Goodiness. Great to see you again. Welcome, Harshu, Danja, Shando. Welcome, everybody. How we doing, YouTube? How we doing? Make some noise. Yes, thanks for all the love, everybody. What's your thought? Let's see. Girl Gang Goodiness asks, what's your thoughts about web development engineer? I'm a web development engineer. So I'm Jason, full stack developer here at DevSlopes. I code a lot of cool things. I think web development is great. There's a huge future for it. It's very popular. There's an abundance of jobs and opportunities in both like employed work and freelance work. So web development's awesome. A lot of cool technologies out there that you can use for web development. Do you have anything about AWS? Not specifically, no. Jafar asks how I'm doing. I'm doing fantastic. Just digging holes in my backyard, looking for a broken pipe, which I found. Now I just need to fix it and I'm good. No flooding in the back. Love from India. Love from the US. Welcome. How we doing, YouTube? Let's see what we have going on. Let's see. Joseph asks, what do you think about data structures and algorithms? I think they're super important to know and to understand. I would say that you don't need to be an expert at them in programming, but knowing these things you will use to some degree in development, obviously based on the project that you're working on. And it's good to know for the job interview process. A lot of people or a lot of interviewers put a focus around these things, data structures and algorithms, just because they want to see that you have an understanding and underlying concept of programming and how it works. But again, in my experience, at least the development positions that I've had, it's not like hardcore data structures and algorithms. You don't have to be a wizard at it. You just have to know it. Have a basic understanding. Original Doom Gaming is stuck on the moon. Shoot. Somebody write some code and bring them back. Aliens are chasing you. You know what? I think my my only fear in life, my only true fear is aliens. Like if I saw one, I don't know. Like I can handle everything else, but just the thought of an alien would wreck me. Let's see. Do you have good resources for data structures and algorithms? I can't think of any off the top of my head. Let's see. Max Speed. Hey, Jason, what laptop would you recommend to learn coding, Mac or Linux or Windows? Really, any of them are good. All right. For a beginner starting out, any of those are going to be fine. I've never used a Linux computer before, but I have used Mac and Windows. I prefer Mac. When I was a full stack engineer at Dell, I used a Windows computer and it worked just fine. But MacBooks ship with more things out of the box ready to start coding on. But again, that's Macs are obviously pricier, right? So as a beginner, I wouldn't be going out and spending like dropping the big bucks on getting a Mac unless, you're in a position you can do that, fine, whatever. But just start on a basic computer, see if you like programming. And then as you get better at it, then you can invest in a better computer, whether that be a Windows or a Mac. But I'm a Mac fan, so. All right, what else do we have? Radasan, good to see you again. Without streamings, DevSlopes channel is going inactive. What do you mean without streamings? We're streaming. I don't know exactly what you mean. Someone says Python. Yes, Python is fantastic programming language. Somebody, Radasan asks, is PHP that bad? It really is up to the developer. That's very opinionated. I personally, just me personally, don't like PHP like whatsoever. I've dabbled in it just a tiny bit and I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't like this at all. And I'll never learn it. But that's just me personally. There's lots of jobs that are still using PHP. You also have to consider that PHP has been around for about 20 years. There's companies with legacy code that are still using it. WordPress is still using it. There's still jobs out there that are using it. But if you're building like a startup company or a lot of these other newer companies, whatnot, or with newer products, they're not using PHP. Let's see. Radasan, I meant DevSlopes channel isn't uploading new videos right now. Yeah, DevSlopes hasn't uploaded a lot of YouTube videos right now. I guess you can blame that on me. I've been lately, well, before I stopped, but I was creating a bunch of YouTube videos prior for DevSlopes, but my schedule kind of got tied up. I'm finishing the content for the DevSlopes Web Academy. So there's only one more module that I'm completing. So I've been spending a lot of time recording and prepping content for that. It's for the back-end development side of things. So, I mean, DevSlopes, we're a tight team, smaller team and everything. And all of us, you know, are taking care of other responsibilities. Mine, once I can get the DevSlopes Web Academy finished, then yes, you'll start seeing more YouTube videos and whatnot coming from DevSlopes. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, we still have ads and everything that are pointing to our YouTube videos, so they're still getting a lot of traffic. But yeah, let's see. Is Node.js the true key to happiness? Oh man, that's a good question. I think it's a one of the keys of happiness. I love working with Node. It's fantastic. I love it. All right, let's see if Instagram has any questions popping up here. So, Girl Gang Goodiness asks, after HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, should I learn React or Angular? So, great question. I would recommend React, and the reason being is because React uses JavaScript in a way that you're already familiar with, and it has less of a learning curve than Angular. Now, React is the UI library, so it only handles the DOM manipulations. Okay, Angular is end to end. It ships with all the tools that you need for the client side, like DOM manipulation, with all the backend tools, so you can make your databases and HTTP requests. All right, so Angular also, you're going to have to learn TypeScript. Okay, another learning curve. With Angular, it has a lot of Angular specific syntax. All right, literally everything that you're going to do in Angular, you have to Google. Like, how do you capture, you know, data out of an input field, things like that. Whereas React, it just uses it just like JavaScript would, a lot more natural. But Angular, much steeper learning curve, very strict on their project organization and development processes and guidelines, the way you should do things. Whereas React is a little bit more loose. Both great choices, but Angular just way steeper learning curve. It's more of a beast. Hey, is 50K a year possible with remote from end jobs? Absolutely. Omar, absolutely it is. So, I mean, my first job after learning how to code, my very, 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 very first job paid 78,000 a year. That was like 5 years ago or something when I got a job. And it's very common after 3 years of coding to be making six figures plus. But yeah, 50K a year is definitely possible. Harshu 96, C or C++. It depends. It just depends on what you want to do with programming. Like if you're wanting to do Android development, then you wouldn't do C or C++. Those are great languages for like embedded systems, working on like robots for Mars or something. All right. And there's other obviously use cases, but you have to consider that these are compiled languages. So they're very performant. So if you need to build software that needs to be insanely performant, like blazing fast, like C++, for an example, Call of Duty is built with C++, is one of the programming languages. But why is that? That's because Call of Duty needs to make, you know, split second decisions on the fly. And so it can be compiled to a very small file size, and it's blazing fast. Now, if you want to do web development, C++ and C is going to be like crazy overkill. All right. Like, and they have very steep learning curves. So it just depends on what you want to do. They're great programming languages, but each language kind of has their time and their place and the purpose of what they solve. What else? do we have from Instagram? Let's see. How do you need to know to get a programming position in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS enough? So yeah, you can learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you're proficient in those, yes, absolutely. You can start freelancing. You can get a job. Most jobs, when they're looking for like a front end developer, they do want you to have experience working with APIs because as a front end developer, it is expected of you to know how to work with an API and bring data and inject that into the UI. All right. You don't have to be an expert, but have a working knowledge of how to hit different endpoints of the API so you can, consume the data, consume the API into the UI of your project. Let's see. I will study software engineering. It is the best. It could be, if it makes you happy. And, software development, a developer salary in most cases is pretty generous. So I think it's fantastic. I encourage everybody to learn programming. What would you say about Python on back end? It's all so there's two things. It's personal choice, and then it also you have to consider what does your project need to do and how does it need to scale. Um, Me personally, especially when I'm doing web development, I have always chosen, 95% of the time using Node, Express, and Mongo. And the reason why I choose that is because with me doing web development, I already know JavaScript, and I can write all my server-side code in JavaScript, and I don't have to go and learn a new backend technology like Python or Ruby. All right. Or, there's several others, but so I keep everything in just Node, Express, and Mongo to work with the backend. Let's see. Do you suggest a project for my final semester placement using Python, please, sir? Really, any full stack application. So something that does everything from interactive front end development, like interactive UI, to making all your HTTP requests, CRUD operations, create, read, update, and delete. Storing information in a database. Once you build that, you're good. You could build a clone of some type of app. You could do a Slack app clone, Twitter clone. Um, there's lots of stuff that you can build. Just Google full stack apps for beginners and you'll find something good. All right, YouTube, I'm going to get to you here in a second, get to your questions. Is it easy for me? I have learned Java. Now I want to learn Python. Is it easy or not? So my question to you is, why are you wanting to learn a new programming language? Why not stick with Java? Like, I don't know how long you've been, using Java. All right. But I wouldn't spend so much time just learning. Like you got to reap the benefits of programming and what you've put time into already. But it sounds like maybe you haven't discovered what you want to do with programming. Like if you learn Java, now you're learning Python and wondering if you should learn it or not. What you should do is decide what you want to do with programming. Do you want to build mobile apps like Android or iOS? Do you want to do web development? Do you want to work on embedded systems? Like, do you want to build AI and machine learning apps? Like, what do you want to do with it? Python is a fantastic beginner language because the syntax is really nice. It's clean. Python has a very general purpose. It's a fantastic scripting language. You can do AI, machine learning with Python. You can also do front end and back end, web development with Python or game development with Python. So it has a very general, broad use, but it's up to you. Just decide what you want to do with programming and then learn that. Let's see. Oh, what am I doing here? All right. Let's see. As a front-end developer, should I know all the frameworks or React is enough? React's enough. You don't need to know all the frameworks as a programmer. You just don't. I don't know all the frameworks. I've been programming for like 6 years now, and I specialize in MERN apps, which is Mongo, Express, React, and Node. I've also done the mean stack, which is the same thing, but working with Angular. And so I haven't worked with Angular for a while, but I know it real well. But React is what I take a focus on. So um, don't try to learn everything. Focus and become an expert at one thing, or not an expert, but very, very proficient in it. and then go make money with it. There's no need to learn everything out there. React is plenty. All right, YouTube, let's see what we have happening over here. We've got like 13 minutes left. So Original Doom Gaming, I hope you're okay. I hope those aliens haven't destroyed you. Let's see, are you planning on a sale on Black Friday? That's not my department. DevSlopes has done that in the past. So I don't know. Someone asks, is PHP a good start for programming? I wouldn't learn PHP. If you're a beginner, don't. I don't want to say don't, but PHP has been around for 20 years, and a lot of the jobs out there are working with more current technologies. PHP is still used. Okay, the market's not dead for PHP, and I'm not saying it's bad, but there's nicer programming languages to work with, all right, than PHP. Let's see, Karios Roshi. I don't know anything about coding. Where do I start? So here's where you start as a beginner programmer. If you don't know, any programming, first decide what you want to do with programming. Okay, do you want to build iPhone apps, Android apps, or do web development? Okay, if you want to do iPhone apps, you're going to start learning Swift. If you want to do Android apps, you're going to start using Kotlin. If you're going to do web development, you're going to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then you're going to move into, I'd recommend React because it uses JavaScript in more of a way that you're familiar with. All right, so that's where I would start. And then you can start taking, once you've decided what programming language to do, then you can, find some tutorials on YouTube, some free stuff, because you want to test the waters, make sure that you like programming. Some people think, oh, I want to be a coder, but then they actually try it and they're like, this sucks. Like I don't want to be a programmer anymore, but some people love it. So take some free stuff, see if you decide that you want to do it. And then I've been down the self-taught road myself. I'm a self-taught developer. It's very rough. It can be very, very hard if you don't have like a community or a support system or, somewhere you can go and ask questions. All right. If you want to check out the DevSlopes Academy, I'm the Web Academy instructor and mentor. I help students every day, teach them how to code and then teach them how to make money with their programming skills. So you can go to devslopes.com/apply. All right. And then just set up a free call with one of our career coaches, see if DevSlopes would be a good fit for you. Let's see. Toga Games, I like Core with use of Lua, similar to Roblox. That's awesome. Can you give it exact methods, instructions to learn C++? My exact methods and instructions is ask yourself why you want to learn C++. All right. Go Google what kind of things you can build with C++. And be mindful that C++ has one of the steepest learning curves of any programming language you can learn. If you're a beginner, I don't recommend C++ for beginners, but if it is exactly the type of stuff you want to be coding and C++ is the programming language, then yeah, learn C++. But just be mindful, it has an insanely steep learning curve and it's difficult for beginners and even senior developers. So JavaScript or Python, they each have their time and their place. I mean, JavaScript is more widely used just because, web development, but Python, if you want to do machine learning, AI, do games, it can be used for web development as well, like a backend language. It just depends on what you want to do with programming. I can't stress that enough. Learn the programming language that corresponds or associates with what you want to do with programming language. There is no best programming language. There's popular programming languages, but you got to learn what it is you're passionate about. What do you want to do with coding? When I first got into coding, I wanted to be an iPhone developer. I was like, dude, I want to build iPhone apps. It's cool. It's sick. That's what I'm going to do. And then my first introduction to programming was actually web development. Okay, I learned Angular and the whole mean stack. I did that, learned the concepts of programming. Then I switched and went back to iOS development. And I started, tinkering around with that. I liked it, but I wasn't in love with it. I was like, this is cool, but it doesn't like make me excited like web development for whatever reason does. So what I thought I wanted to do, I didn't do, and I went with web development. Sorry if you guys can hear my dog barking in the back. Sounds like she's pretty excited. Let's see, Mohammed. If so, wait, what are you asking here? So, do you recommend to start with C++ to learn data science and algorithms and computer science basics, or do you recommend another language as a beginner? I recommend. See, that's like, I guess if you want to do data science and algorithms, like, sure, you can do that with C++, but you can do it with a whole slew of other programming languages as well. C++ has an insane learning curve to it. If you are a beginner, I would start with something else personally, right? C++ is hard. I mean, programming is hard in general, but C++ is like the extreme side of things where yeah, it's a very difficult language. Um, let's see. And you asked if so, do you recommend resources like books or courses? So everybody has a different learning style. Some people learn better doing documentation. Most people are more visual, and they want a course so they can do kind of a follow along. So it really depends on your learning style. What would you recommend for marketing analysis? I don't know. That's not my department. I don't know. I don't know. Hey, sir, is Flutter worth it to learn because I want to be a mobile app developer? So Flutter is great. It's cross-platform, right? So you can do Android and iPhone apps, and build once, deploy everywhere. But you're not going to find a job for Flutter if that's what you're looking to do. A lot of startup companies are using Flutter just because you know they're tight on funds. They're a startup. They can build things in one code base and then scale from there. But also, you have to keep in mind that Flutter and like React Native, for an example, for a general use case, they can cover multiple development platforms like mobile development. But those programming languages don't always have direct access to very specific features that iOS and Android might have that are only available through native development. All right. So you have to think about the app that you're building and the way it's going to scale. And if it ever needs direct access to some of these core, proprietary fundamental features that are specific to iPhone and iOS, or iPhone and Android. Let's see. Sebastian, hey, thanks a lot for the tips, man. You just helped me finish my third game that I created. Do you think to learn both C# and C++ and Java for creating a new web feature for the game? I don't reckon. Let's see. So, okay. So here's my thoughts. We're gonna wrap up here in 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes. So C# is great, right? Great for game development, especially if you're using something like Unity 3D. I believe C# is the programming language that they use. C++ in most cases is going to be overkill unless you're building games like Call of Duty that are insanely performant heavy. All right, that needs to make split-second decisions on the fly. C++ is going to be overkill for almost anything traditional that you would do in web development. Okay, C++ is performance. If you need an insane amount of performance and a very small file size, then C++ is great. Otherwise, it's overkill for almost everything. Java, that's more of an enterprise language. I believe you can do game development with it. It has a very broad development kind of thing that you can use with it. It's also very secure, and it's pretty fast. But if you're looking to do web, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but again, that's for more traditional web development. If you're doing games, you could also look into Python. Tell about management information systems, please. How to be great for that. I don't know. I don't work on management systems. Let's see. In terms of coding, what would be helpful? The most helpful thing is decide what you want to code, like what kind of apps you want to build. That determines what programming language, and then go from there. For self-taught beginner, what advice would you give that would help avoid developing bad coding habits? You've got to have a mentor and a coach. Okay. If you don't want to develop bad habits, like even if you're following along some coding tutorial that you found on YouTube, how do you know that person that's teaching it isn't using bad practices? All right, because there's like best practices in programming, and then it's kind of loose from that point forward, and it's kind of your own programming style and opinion. Now, some of these programming and style opinions that these teachers have on YouTube that you're doing the tutorials for, they're not bad. Like I've got my own programming style and opinions about the way to do things, and it's not necessarily right or wrong. They do follow good practices, but you really need a coach and a mentor, someone who's worked in the field professionally or has studied some serious, knowledge and books and has consumed blood, sweat, and tears into learning how to code and is super crazy about following best practices and reads documentation. So at the DevSlopes Academy, I mean, I'm a full stack engineer. I was a full stack engineer at Dell. I learned so much there, and I'm the DevSlopes Web Academy and coach. And so I work with students. I personally review their code and say, hey, this works, what you've done, but it's kind of hacky and it's not following best practices. Here's a recommendation that I would do it this way, right? And I'm not saying that I'm right in everything, but I've been working professionally as a developer for over 5 years. And so I've worked with a handful of different companies with senior developers. I've done the whole, code reviews and all that stuff. And so I've been around the block a little bit, and so I like to take this information and I use it to help teach my students. So again, if you want to work with somebody like me, if you want a coding mentor and a coach, go to devslopes.com/apply. Check out our DevSlopes Academy for iOS, and what is it? iOS, Android, and web, and see if the DevSlopes Academy is for you. I'd be stoked and honored to work with you. I want to change my name to Java. Is that okay? Yeah, you can you can change your name to anything you want. It's legal, at least here in the US. I don't know about laws anywhere else in the world, but here in America, you can name your child for the most part anything you want. Let's see, what's the difference between engineers and developers? It's kind of like a gray area. They're really the same thing when it comes down to it. I mean, people might think that an engineer is more architectural type things like algorithms and whatnot. But like when I was at Dell, I was a full stack engineer. You could call me a programmer, a coder, like it's all the same thing. But people tend to think that engineers are more on the architectural side of things, which makes sense. All right, wow, it's top of the hour here. Let me see if we've got any more questions. I'll answer like one more question. Okay, I'm going to answer this question. Tyson on Instagram brings up a great question. He asks, what are some causes for beginners to getting burnt out while taking courses and or boot camps? And what are the best tips to prevent? That's a really great question. So one of the things that beginners do a lot, and I did this, all right, is they spend way too much time learning and in tutorials. All right, way too much time in tutorials. You should dive into tutorials, learn the basics, concepts, learn to build some basic, simple type of apps. But then it's time to like cut ties and move on. You've got to start building your own projects, because the problem with tutorials is you're just following along and just copying code. But that's not how it works in the real world. All right. You need to take a project and build it and learn how to use your brain to problem solve, how to take these complex problems, break them down into smaller pieces, and then come up with these little solutions to solve the overall picture. All right. And so a lot of people as a beginner developer, they spend way too much time learning, and it's information overload. You're like filling your brain up with so much stuff. And if you are learning multiple programming language, like you start out with web, then you want to do Python, and then you want to do, Ruby on Rails or something, or Swift, like that's too much. Stick with one programming language, like whether you want to do web, iOS, or Android. Stick with it for a year, become proficient in it, and then learn something else if that's what your heart desires. All right. So sorry I didn't get to everybody's questions, but the fantastic news, I'll be here tomorrow, same time. So again, I'm Jason with devslopes.com. If you're interested in some coaching and mentoring, go to devslopes.com/apply. Check out the DevSlopes Academy. I'd be stoked and honored to work with you. If you want a fun coding challenge to boost your skills, go to 30daycodingchallenge.com. DevSlopes puts on these 30-day coding challenges. Whether you're beginner or experienced, it's going to boost your skills. All right, so that's all for today. Until next time, stay safe, stay positive, keep coding. Adios.